Hi, my name is Frankie. Thank you for listening to my mom. I never listen.
The podcast, Nothing But Net, keeps getting better and better when we have incredible leaders that have great vision. And we have the Horizon League Commissioner, Julie Roe Lach. Julie, it is so great to see you. Thanks for being with us.
Good to see you too. Hard to believe it was September when we got together last.
I know. I appreciate being invited to your media day for your men and women. I had a great time. I met a lot of great coaches, really good student athletes. Let's break it down a little bit about your league first. This is typically a one bid league on the men and the women's side. There's some certain inherent pressures that come with that, but there's a lot of opportunity as well. How do you see it?
I like your word opportunity. And we also, as on the men's side, we've been a multi-bid league, and then we've also had the deep runs when Butler was a member, but that's now a decade ago. So while we're proud of that, we got to move forward from it. And we've often talked about, one, there is so much riding on not just the regular season, but of course our league championship, because that means the champion gets to represent us in the postseason. But also we want to really raise the entire strength of the league so that our league champion has a chance, just like Oakland did last year, with a decent seed path to make some noise. And we've had that happen on both the men's and women's side. But that's where I think as a one bid league, it doesn't stop there. And of course, we want to strive to be a multi-bid league, but seed path matters, and that's a whole collective effort.
So I want to come back to how you're going to incentivize your coaches from their schedule, just so ultimately, so you can be a multiple bid league. I know that's where that's going. So I want to hold there because I don't want to go there yet. What I want to do is something I like to do with great leaders in college basketball, and that is humanize before we strategize. So I want to get to know a little bit more about you. Like, what are you doing in your off time? What's your family like? How busy is your schedule? What are some of the things you like? Do you like to play golf? Do you have a group of friends outside of basketball, stuff that, people may take for granted that are important parts of you being able to be the best you can be.
Well, thanks for the question. I'm happy to jump into the Horizon League part, but it's fun to take a step back. I'll just start with where I grew up because that shaped me quite a bit. I grew up in a small town in Southern Illinois that is a coal mining and farming community. Not a lot to do there, but they had a lot of basketball hoops. So I often say it was a lot like the movie Hoosiers, except it was in Illinois. I don't think they closed the gym very often. So a lot of pickup basketball. And that to me is where I developed just my love for the game. You just lose track of time in a lot of those pickup games. Fast forward then, in college, I had a great experience with my coach playing Lori Kearns at Millikan University. So there's always been a basketball thread that takes me to the present day. My husband and I thankfully both love the sport and college sports in general, but we now are proud parents of two daughters, sixth grade and freshmen in high school, who both play basketball. So I see a lot of basketball games, Debbie. And as a parent, I think it has really helped me on the empathy side of coaches and administrators, where you care about a team in a very passionate way, but then you really have to take a step back and say, okay, what are the lessons being learned here? So sports are a huge part of our family. We love to travel, love to bike ride. I love to bass fish. As I said, that I can get back home quite a bit. I'm a pretty good bass fisher woman, I must say. And my dad and I've solved a lot of world's problems on the lake with a couple Miller Lights. So,
yes,
that grounds me for sure. And other than that, I play a little golf, not very good, still learning. Pickleball, same, just any sort of activity. But primarily, when I'm not working, our lives revolve around our girls and their activities and trying to keep them on the straight and narrow.
See, that's a great way of diving into conversation, because now we have a little background of what culmination of all of your experiences in and around the game that help us figure out how you think the way you think and how you see the game the way you see the game. Because I do think when you're a leader and you have responsibility like you have as a commissioner of the Horizon League, plus your other responsibilities in and around basketball, I think it's pretty cool to hear you talk about your daughters and going to watch them play. And so I have to ask you, when you go and watch your daughters play, there's two types of parents. There's those that are actively involved in the game, maybe yelling at the officials and or providing advice to coaches, or there's those like me that sit and watch their kid play and say absolutely nothing. Don't smile. I don't speak. Sometimes I don't even sit next to my husband because I don't want my body language to be giving off something bad. So I'm just wondering, how do you go to the games with your husband?
Um, I have been both. So I've never yelled at officials, for the record, and our family does not do that because I deal, as you know, with officials a lot, and I appreciate their job is impossible. Notwithstanding that, I'm definitely on the quiet side most of the time, and I usually distance myself from parents of our team as well as the opposing team. Just it's healthier for me. There have been a few times, where there's a little frustration, or even, and you see it, and we talk about this a lot with youth sports. It is developmental, and sometimes they're focused on the wrong thing, even in high school sports. Like, yes, you want to win, but you're supposed to be focused on the fundamentals of the sport, team ball, good sportswomanship. And when I see that eroding, that bothers me more, or selfish play, so that's no help side defense. Like, those are the types of things that we talk about at our dinner table of, hey, here's what matters. Because my kids sometimes they'll be like, hey, I only had 4 points. I'm like, yeah, but I saw you help on defense 6 times. That's not sexy. And I don't know if the coach saw it, but that's what matters to me. Like, that you see the game.
So it's a really interesting segue for us because we're going to talk about women's basketball in particular, because I really want to find out from you your thoughts on that. But because you're responsible for more than just the women's game, you have a huge responsibility on the men's side as well. And basketball and sport and our landscape has changed so dramatically. And you're talking about some of the fundamental things about teamwork and learning to succeed and fail, and finding ways that you can add and be productive and add value to what your team is doing. Where are we going, Julie? Like, there's so much negative out there about where college sports is, but then you see another side of it that has a lot of positive. And in your league, it's a different financial structure than other power leagues. Where are we going? Like, what's happening? Are we eroding away the fundamental principles of why sport is important, or are we just turning into big business now for a 16 and 17-year-old kid to have to make decisions around finances and not about having the wisdom to be able to see down the road what the value of an education could be?
Yeah, I think there's a 2-part answer to this. And we just saw it with the college football playoff, the amount of public interest and obviously money focused on the truly elite level of men's sports and women's sports is pretty extraordinary. And on the one hand, it's exciting, but it has really driven it to a financial model. That's why now it's quote NIL, but it's really players getting paid. Mm-hmm. They are the amount of money that you're reading about. I mean, we're hoping to figure out how to force disclosure so we'll know how inflated these numbers actually are that we're reading about.
If people are telling the truth, you mean?
Right, exactly. So with that is, I am concerned about it. I will say, yeah, I saw Ohio State's alleged NIL pot of money that they were able to give their student athletes for football, but I also saw Coach Day's post-game comments about why they won, and it wasn't because of the amount of money. There were some teams that spent more. It was because of the culture, because he had a lot of seniors, because he was developing them, not just as young men as leaders. And I think he actually believed what he says. I don't know him, but he seems sincere to me in that way. So I think that can still happen, is my point, if the coaches have the right value proposition and they are forcing it, frankly, to be embedded in their culture. At our level, at the mid-major Division I level, where we're still competing nationally, in particular in basketball, we've got almost 4,000 student athletes in the Horizon League. I just had 2 in our office yesterday who are already wanting to talk about a career in sports when they graduate in a year. I was just on two in our office 2 days ago because I was on 2 campuses yesterday in Youngstown and Cleveland State, seeing the student athletes in action. In fact, a basketball student athlete let me in the building and he's like, I know you, I remember you from media day. Like, that is what the development side is, because they know, yeah, they have aspirations to go pro. They know that's unlikely. And so the coaches, especially in the majority of Division One, have an obligation to make sure they're developing them beyond athletes.
Right.
So I don't think we've lost our way. I've also said at the mid-major level, it's a bit easier. We don't have the temptation of extraordinary revenue. Our programs are subsidized heavily. While still generating revenue, they're not paying for themselves. Most Division One programs don't. So I'm not a cynic. I don't think we're losing our way. I think there's just a recognition that at the very top, there's a lot of money that has to be recognized.
Yeah, I love the way you said that. I mean, you're right about culture and fundamental things that are important to building. And you're always going to be on a team. I believe that no matter where you go. So you have to learn how teams function and operate, the good and the bad that comes with it. And definitely the way you communicate, what you emphasize, what's important in your own branding, all of those things matter. And that's why the Horizon League is lucky to have you, because you do have a clear thought on it. And I can hear your leadership coming through. If there's any of your coaches listening right now, which I hope all of them will, I'm sure they will.
They like me better in the off season, Debbie.
Well, you said it right about the officials. You got to deal with that probably more than you got to deal with anything. And most of the coaches that call you probably are calling you about something in the officiating.
That's right. And if I'm calling them in the middle of the season, I'm calling them about the way they're managing their angst around the officiating. So yeah, it's there's accountability full circle.
Besides being the commissioner of the Horizon League, you also have many other responsibilities outside of your league. And one of those is providing direction, strategy, vision for the Oversights Committee in women's Division One basketball. So I want to talk to you about that a little bit, because that's a fairly new committee over the course of the scope of the game. You know, what do you explain to me the Oversights Committee? What the Oversights Committee is actually responsible for?
Well, it's interesting. So you got the Women's Basketball Committee, which basically is all things championship. So they seed the bracket. They also are responsible for deciding where the championship's going to go, and then they essentially travel the entire month of March. That is not the committee I'm on.
Right.
So then there's the committee where I think in simplest terms, it's like we're supposed to be guardians of the game. And in terms of really, the oversight means oversight of the national officiating program, oversight of the playing rules for women's basketball, oversight of ultimately the championships committee theoretically reports to us, but I say that's a dotted line. They have a lot of autonomy and independence, and understandably so. But then also oversight in terms of like, what is the strategy of this game? So when I was asked to join the committee, it was shortly after the Kaplan report came out, where the gross inequities were revealed relative to the opportunities, like in the weight room, but then some other issues around the men's and women's tournaments. And I said, I'm only going to serve on this committee if we're going to own this report and implement some of these recommendations. And that has been frankly gratifying, because that is what this committee, essentially most of those recommendations from the Kaplan report, like we need to have the same number of postseason opportunities controlled by the NCAA for women as we do men. So that's why the WBIT was created and launched last year and received pretty good reviews. We need to ensure that the championships experience, not just weight rooms, but A to Z is the same. And we were oversight of that after the championships committee took the first run at it. So to me, it's been meaningful because there's been a sincere effort by Lynn Holzman in particular at the NCAA, who's vice president of women's basketball, to take those recommendations and implement what we could in short order, and then which ones are going to be a longer runway. And that was this unit that was just passed at convention. And I got to tell you, I wasn't like, our group recommended that. We modeled it. Other groups had say too, but our group had a pretty strong leadership role in terms of how do we create this unit. It's not just going to be what the men did. We'll look at that and then tailor it to make it more meaningful on the women's side. And I think we did that. But I'll tell you, when that vote passed 292-0 at convention just last week, I was more moved than I thought, because frankly, Division One is divided on a lot of issues right now. So for us to be unified on something as important as women's basketball finally receiving some revenue, it was a great moment.
Congratulations. It's definitely a part of a major movement. It's a moment in time that everybody should recognize. So there's the actual unit, the definition of that, and then what the value actually means. So take us to the definition first, and then take us to the value, like what you see with your vision as a part of the committee.
So the idea was, when we started off with just like what are some guiding principles, is one, the money needs to be meaningful. It needs to be as equitable as possible relative to the men's, not equal, because frankly, there's not enough money from the ESPN contract to make it equal compared to the men's CBS Turner, but it needs to be equitable, as in proportional. And we do need to recognize excellence. So obviously that means recognize not only teams that appear, but then also teams that win. So in terms of actual dollars, there's going to be an on-ramping here for it.
Mm-hmm.
But within a few years, the value of the unit's going to be $190,000. The men's is about, I think, $380 right now. So that's that's the amount paid per year. And then it's essentially, there's an accumulation effect that occurs, but it's real money. I'll pause there because you might have more questions.
Yeah. So let me ask you, the unit, the men is it's a 5-year distribution.
A 6-year.
Okay,
Yeah. So it's really, so I think
it's like $2 million.
Right. And then you divide it by 6.
Okay. So if I make the NCAA tournament as a men's team, I'm going to basically essentially get $2 million over the course of 6 years.
What happens is that's really what on the men's side informs the equal conference distribution. So basically every conference gets that for their quote AQ.
Right. So on
when
the
you
side,
win, then that's another $2 million.
Yeah. So it's every unit is $2 million, and it gets paid out over 6 years, which goes to revenue share, however they determine, because it's undesignated funds.
Right.
Right. On the women's side, 190. Is there an accumulation of that, or is that 190 per year?
It's essentially it's 190 payable over 3 years. So the conference will accumulate that. So it'll be like a 190 line item for the AQ. But rather than dilute it over 6, that's where we said, let's make it 3.
Yeah.
So then it's more meaningful. It is a higher percentage of the ESPN contract, which wasn't obviously limited to women's basketball, but ESPN shared with what portion of this multi-sport contract was attributable to women's basketball, because it was the biggest piece of the pie.
Mm-hmm.
It is a higher percentage of that piece than the men's unit is of the CBS Turner contract, which goes to the equitable part, because there have been some, and I understand the argument of, well, it should just be equal. To be equal, we would have to literally strip down the men's unit and not fund the men's unit the way it's funded, which, as you can imagine, would affect some conferences that are planning on winning multiple units for the next 5, based on their financial forecasting. So that's hard. That's a hard piece to unwind.
Mm-hmm. So what does this mean? I look at a spin on it as the women, because there's so many people that have been asking and fighting for this for a long time. And we should recognize those that have been, before us, that have been trying to get this done. What does it mean, though? Like, is it a reward for those that have already invested in women's basketball? Does it have some sort of other value outside of the hardcore cash? Explaining the percentages versus the actual dollars to make it equitable is a really important piece of this, because there are a lot of people that are we're going to say, well, the guys still get more money. What does it really mean across the NCAA for a unanimous vote for everyone to agree that women's basketball should get a unit and be incentivized for making the NCAA tournament?
Yeah, I think I think the symbolism is frankly more even meaningful than the actual money.
Mhm.
That's not to say the money has no meaning or impact.
Right.
And that was the point of trying to structure it the way it is. It's just a recognition that women's sports, not just basketball, are generating some incredible revenue. The fact that the women's championship game last year eclipsed the men's game in viewers by several million, with 18.9 million on the women's side and the men's 14 or 15. I mean,
Yeah.
that's amazing, but not shocking, because you said it earlier, like, this is not just a moment. We're part of a larger movement here. You can feel it. It's
Mhm.
palpable. You know, I'm a season ticket holder for the Fever. I feel it there when I go. And it is not just the Caitlin Clark effect. This is a movement. I was just at a sold out inaugural or just first ever game of a professional volleyball team, the Indy Ignite, that it just started here in Indy. 7,000 people were there to watch a
Is that the
team.
Love? Is that the Love League?
What's that?
What's the name of that professional volleyball league? Is it Love?
Oh, it's the PVF, Professional Volleyball
Okay.
Federation, Indy Ignite, and I'm not getting paid to push tickets, but they're a phenomenal franchise. But my point is, you could just feel it there too. The energy was amazing, and these women are stud athletes, just literally killing it as they were hitting the ball straight down. It was just fun to see. So that to me is why it's symbolic of there's a larger movement happening here. I think the revenue share that is going on with this unit is just a step, and that was my comments have been. This is a step. We are not done. We're just we're moving in the right direction.
It's impressive, and it feels like investment is happening. It's still not as high a percentage as it should be, but it is moving in the right direction. At least, the one thing that I've always said since you brought up Caitlin is she's the greatest disruptor in the history of basketball, maybe in women's sports. I mean, we've had the Mia Hamm effect in the 99ers, and it had some sustainability. Me, as a personal friend of mine, I know exactly what she does and how she goes about conducting her business with her team first, which are her teammates from North Carolina and the 99 World Cup team. The disruption has brought so much attention, and we needed a disruption. We needed something to shake up the marketplace. It's like what Live Golf did for the USGA. It's very much the same. It's what Tiger did for golf. I don't want to get into the whole Caitlin Clark thing here, but you mentioned you go to the games, it's pure joy in the arena. I've never experienced that. I mean, I've been in sold out arenas before, but not the joy that we have in the Fever atmosphere. Even on the road, it's like that too. And there is an effect because of Caitlin. You also sit on the Indiana Sports Corporation board of directors. So you got a lot of responsibility, Julie. You got a lot of opportunity to help and to serve and to grow and invest and find ways to make things better for your daughters, right? Because that's what's coming. When you think about your responsibility with the Indiana Sports Corp, which has always been an incredible amateur sports organization, right? There's forever.
Right.
It's been such a great place. Tell me what's business like today, with what you just said about volleyball, with the Indiana Fever, the Pacers going to the playoffs last year.
Well, first of all, I love serving on the board. I'm the current chair and the first female to chair it, which hard to believe it took this long. But at any rate, the Sports Corp was founded in 1979. And we were the first one in the country, and now there's over 300, because obviously the business of sports, the economic impact of sports is well known now in all communities. What we've done in Indy is host these incredible large-scale events. We recognized as an organization that we're going to keep doing that, and we've got 3 Final Fours in the next 5 years, 26, 20 men's, 28 women's, 29 men's again. So, I mean, got a full portfolio of events, but we need to do more, and we want to build this ecosystem where not just these events are happening, but we are the mecca for people to come do sports education, to research, learn, study, and teach in sport. We want to be the place where headquarters are located, like the Horizon League, like the NCAA, like USA Gymnastics, like USA Track and Field. We want to be the tech hub of sports tech, and we've located 10 different sports tech companies to Indianapolis. And then the fifth pillar that we just launched as part of this 2050 vision is we want to be the capital of women's sports. No city has claimed that yet. So I think some have made incredible strides, including Kansas City with their NWSL stadium. And by the way, we had this fifth pillar, as we call it, before Caitlin declared for the draft, and Indy was fortunate to secure the first selection. But that has obviously been a huge catalyst towards this vision. But it has been so inspiring to see the private and public sector rally around this vision. And I can tell you right now, the most energy and enthusiasm is around the fifth pillar, which is what Allison Barber, the former president of the Fever, calls it affectionately. And we call it the fifth pillar because, frankly, it was the last one that we added, which now we've realized it probably should have been the first, because there is so much excitement around it. And it is starting to inform strategy, not just around the Indy Ignite. Obviously, that was already in the works, but talks of, we already have an Indy 11 team soccer. Should we be thinking about the next level? What about lacrosse? What are the other organizations we should be recruiting here that are leading in women's sport? So it's exciting to be a part of it. So to your question, and my kids see it because we're going to host the WNBA All-Star game here in July. And they know I go to a lot of meetings, and I say, hey, I'm doing this because I want you to come back here and live someday. It's because you know that this is a place where women thrive, not and men too, but especially women. And to me, that's part of this vision.
I am so grateful for your time, Julie. That is just absolutely amazing. I have lots of questions for you, but I want to say that because I want to have you back, because
okay, happy to join anytime.
The questions I want to ask you on the podcast could get me fired. So I want to make sure that I am, get this podcast going so that we can bring you back, and we'd love to have you back as much as you want to come back. And we're so grateful for your time on Nothing But Net. Parting shot?
Well, congratulations to you on your incredible honor at NC State. Long time coming. And you are one of the individuals who has been a champion for women's, not just basketball, but women's sport. And obviously you have a global impact, but thank you and congrats. It's really well deserved.
Well, thank you very much. That means a lot to me coming from you. It is an honor I was never expecting, but it's one that certainly is very emotional for sure. And with that, we will look forward to having you back on Nothing But Net.
Thank you.
Julie, thank you for spending your time. It's so great to be with you.
You too.